Joining us now with much more on this, the editor-in-chief of LifeZette, Fox News contributor Laura Ingraham, and from the American Center for Law and Justice, Jay Sekulow is with us. You filed an amicus curiae in this case, an amicus brief in this case. Are you as shocked as I am? I felt that you put in issues in your brief that the government and the Department of Justice representative that was arguing they should have been using, that they didn't use. Did you see information and law left on the table here?
I did. Look, I think this is a really clear-cut case. The lawyer for the Department of Justice was asked the question, are you saying this was from the judges that the president has the authority to do this on his own initiative? Is this his authority exclusively? And the answer to that question should have been immediately yes. That's what the Constitution says. That's what the statute says. But the Department of Justice lawyer hedged for a long time, and then they, as you just mentioned, they adopted this fallback position that, well, if you think it's overbroad, and I've done overbreadth statute cases at the Supreme Court, you could strike down part of it but uphold part of it. That is not the way you do this. The way you go into this case is the president had the authority to do this, period. The court may disagree with the policy, but that isn't the legal issue. The legal issue is, does the President of the United States have the authority statutorily, constitutionally, to make this determination, this, as the statute says, this proclamation to put in place what he did here? And the answer to that is absolutely he does, and it's rather unremarkable. I mean, this is not a big issue, but they made it one, and...
And let me go to Laura. There were really a very simple issue before the court. Did the president have the authority? I just put up the law. It's very clear constitutionally. The legislative branch gave him the authority. It's his #1 job as commander-in-chief. Did the judge have the authority to put the ban in place? Beyond that, the Ninth Circuit judge is asking these questions about, well, after 9/11. Go ahead.
Yeah, it was frustrating to watch. This is a frustrating argument for a lot of us to watch, I think, because this Justice Department lawyer is a career lawyer arguing this case on the telephone. This clearly the Trump team was not ready, and Jay, I bet you agree with me on this, was not ready to defend this executive action in court. The petition should have been filed in every circuit court in the country within 10 minutes of this thing, frankly, being challenged, and we knew it was going to be challenged. They should have the petition already written for the Supreme Court because they know it's going there. And yet there seemed to be hesitation when he was asked about, well, what evidence did the president have to believe that these 7 countries... I'm thinking to myself, judges are now second-guessing the executive authority of the President of the United States, who is the commander-in-chief, and in whom the Constitution vests the power to handle these types of matters.
I was listening to the special counsel for the Department of Justice, and I'm thinking, wait a minute, where's the Solicitor General or Donald Trump bringing in, or even bringing in temporarily outside counsel, strong, disciplined advocates instead of a career DOJ guy that I didn't get the impression even did his due diligence in preparing for this case? Jay, I don't fault the administration.
What Laura said
is
absolutely correct. I mean, it was painful to watch this. I mean, this was painful to listen to this argument. And it's because the lawyers didn't have their heart in it. And Laura's also absolutely correct. This is going to the Supreme Court. So none of these questions asked by these judges, including the ridiculous question about motive, you know, the answer to that should have been, when they asked that question, so what? What does that have to do with it? This isn't an evidentiary hearing.
Right,
this is a decision where a district court judge enjoined the President of the United States from something he has the statutory and constitutional authority to do. That is the only question there, and they just weren't ready. And I really do think the Solicitor General's office should have been in there. I know we don't have a confirmed SG yet, but there are career SGs that are familiar with the appellate process.
Well, in that sense,
was a
the Democrats
I'm sorry, and I'm just being critical of other lawyers, but this was a horrible argument.
But this is important because the Democrats' purposeful delaying of the President even getting his Attorney General in place or the Solicitor General in this particular case hurt the President because now you have a career special counsel of the DOJ.
Right.
All right, let's talk about the next step. Knowing that the most overturned appeals court in the country is the Ninth Circuit, the most liberal, let's assume they were to rule against the administration, which is a possibility, although I was a little surprised that their questioning seemed to favor the administration more than I would have suspected. But, Laura, my question to you is, if they do not go with the administration, Let's walk through the process. Doesn't it go to Anthony Kennedy? Justice Kennedy?
Yeah, well, yes, he's the justice in charge of the Ninth Circuit. So, and Jay, you can back me up on this. I mean, this is a big waste of time of the Ninth Circuit. They can go right to the Supreme Court.
Yes.
These are exigent circumstances involving matters of national security and the sovereignty of the United States, going right to the executive branch powers. This entire Ninth Circuit charade is not going to get them anywhere. They got to go right to the Supreme Court. I know it's 4-4, but I think they could win at this Supreme Court because this case is ridiculous, regardless of what people think of the underlying merits. So let me just add one more thing. I hope. Well, I would hope a Sotomayor would cross over on this, or a Breyer. But let me just say this: I hope the administration has learned a really important lesson in this. You do not issue these types of executive orders that you know are going to be hot without your legal team in place. You need Sessions, you need the SG, you need the deputy SG, you need U.S. attorneys in place. You need all your ducks in a row, and you need to make the case to the American people as to why this is necessary. I think a lot of this has become a distraction and an albatross around the administration's neck, and I think a lot of it is unnecessary.
All right, let's go to process one more time, and then I want to move on to some of the political arguments I made in my opening monologue, Jay. In the process, assuming the Ninth Circuit, predictably liberal, legislating from the bench, they don't go along with the administration, even though he has the constitutional, statutory, legislative authority to do it. So assume it goes to Anthony Kennedy. Walk us through what the options for Kennedy are. He could decide on his own or put it before the entire court.
Yeah, so he can grant the stay, he could deny the stay, or he can refer it to the entire Supreme Court. I think the latter is more likely. And I'm with Laura. I think there are justices that normally you wouldn't expect on a case like this, but I think this cuts across ideology. I mean, like I say, the four liberal members of the Supreme Court may completely disagree with the president's position on this, but that doesn't answer the legal question. And I think they would be hard-pressed, any of them, frankly, to say that the president did not have this authority. And by the way, this argument that this was an Establishment Clause case, I mean, I spent 30 years arguing Establishment Clause cases at the Supreme Court. That was absurd.
I almost laughed when I heard, because they've used the Establishment Clause for just about everything. All right, let me go to my opening monologue for a second here. This is what the Washington Free Beacon put out. I hope I didn't write any bad words on here. Okay, I didn't. Democracy matters. There's strategic. Well, Laura, you know, you're both attorneys. Protect me here. All right. This is what they're planning.
Red line. Put the red line through.
No intent.
So they're at this ritzy resort. They got all these big Democratic donors there. They lay out a plan, and among their plan of action is defeating Trump through impeachment. This is where it gets serious. The next aspect is this. They're going to combat anything that they disagree with. They say government misinformation, and then filing lawsuits against Donald Trump.
Absolutely.
Do both of you agree with my analysis that this was not Seattle by accident? This was Seattle this was judge shopping. This was Ninth Circuit shopping. They had thought through this strategy, and this was all done by design. And the Trump administration be better paying very close attention to what they're going to do to tie up in knots every part of his agenda. Jay.
Yeah, well, listen, absolutely. And they specifically chose Washington State, and they specifically did that because not only is it a liberal state judicially, but also it's in the Ninth Circuit. But what Laura said is got to be underlined and underscored, and that is the administration better be prepared for an ongoing litigation battle. And that's why you got to get these people confirmed and in place. But the fact of the matter is you got to be prepared for litigation here. And frankly, on this one, the Department of Justice, and I've got a lot of respect. I've worked with the Department of Justice. It was very disappointing to see what happened today. But yes, the politics of this do not bode well. So they've got to get their act together here.
I don't blame the administration as much as you are here for a lot of different reasons. You know, the Democrats
I blame DOJ, actually.
The level of obstruction, the fact that Jeff Sessions is not the Attorney General at this moment, we need a Solicitor General. The President could have brought in outside counsel. That would have been viewed as controversial in and of itself. So we're stuck with a career, and I'm not criticizing the guy. I just felt he left too many great points on the table and could have been better prepared. Laura?
Yeah, well, again, this is what we have to expect. I told a top member of the administration a couple weeks after the election, looked him right in the eye, and I said, I hope you understand every day, this is going to be a war. This is going to be a war to delegitimize your government. It's going to be a war to get you off track, get you on the defensive, get you to say stuff out of anger, and then say, aha, see, I told you so. Get you to be tied up in knots in the legal system so you can't see straight. So you have to be ready for this. None of us can be naive. You know, the Democrats are going to play the same smash-mouth politics that they believe they were embarrassed by over the last year and a half by Trump. They want vengeance. They don't have a lot of power, but they have a lot of money.
Laura, I've been saying the same thing in my own way, in a different way. Every item on the Trump agenda, this is extreme vetting. We're going to see this with originalists like Neil Gorsuch that the president made, I thought, a great nomination in that case. When the president does move forward with any aspect of repealing, replacing Obamacare, there's going to be, grandma's going to be dead in the streets. When he cuts taxes for the middle class and corporations, it'll be tax cuts for the rich. When it comes to energy, he wants to poison the air and water. When it comes to education, the NEA will scream bloody murder.
Right.
When it comes to any of these issues, building the wall, racism, xenophobia, you're right, this is the left's only strategy. They actually put it on paper. We know what their plan is.
Yeah.
So going forward, we've got to know, or the administration has got to know.
Be smart.
Be smart. Jay?
Prepare for litigation, because this is exactly what is going to happen. And when you are prepared for litigation, then you can answer the question that you're asked in a particular case.
But don't you think
Today,
Jeff
that did not
Sessions
happen.
would have done
And
a much better job in his sleep?
I don't blame the president here. This was not the president's call.
I agree with you. I don't blame him at all.
This wasn't his immediate staff. This was a problem at the Department of Justice, and we need to have leadership in these various agencies to get this under control.
But
this was almost not litigated
Jay,
today in an embarrassing kind of way.
If Jeff Sessions were the Attorney General, this would be a very different hearing tonight. Both agree with that?
Absolutely.
I agree with that. I agree with myself.
Well, yeah. Well, the question, the answers would have been better. There wouldn't have been that hesitation. You wouldn't have heard the lawyer say, "Well, this has been a fast process," or whatever he said. You wouldn't have that. But I'm not sure the outcome would have been any different in the end.
Right.
Outcome probably would have been the same.
Maybe not, because it's the Ninth Circuit, and you're right to both jump forward and look to the Supreme Court,
They've
which
already
I think is where this
decided,
goes.
Sean.
But Laura,
Sean, they've already decided this case. This case is decided already.
Agreed.
They've already decided. They went in, they already decided.
I tend to agree with you. Jay was a little more optimistic when I spoke to him earlier on my radio show. But I know both of you, and you're both great attorneys, and without any preparation, I feel both of you could have done a better job. And I shouldn't feel that way, but I do blame the Democrats for their obstruction. That's hurtful to the president.
I thought, Sean, the failure to answer the key question was the case was over before it started. I think the goose was cooked, so to speak. But the argument itself, you don't necessarily win a case in argument. You could sure lose them. And it had a tough road to go with the Ninth Circuit anyways, but not answering the first question, which was the key question, was just horrible. Yeah,
I also think, Laura, the fix was in. That's why they judge shop. This is now, every case is going to be going to the Ninth Circuit, and it's a waste of our time. Guys, good to see you both. Great analysis and insight. Thank you.